Hey, this is 2D Design with Rob Colvin. This is our digital collage assignment where we are thinking about composition. So we are composing a picture. I will take that portrait and transform it into this. So to begin with, I found this portrait by Giovanni Bellini on Wikimedia. This portrait is in the public domain. I do not need to worry about copyright infringement because it is in the public domain. So things you want to consider when you're doing collage, digital or traditional collage, is the images you are using either need to be yours or in the public domain or modified enough away from the original source that they become very different from what you started with. So copyright infringement is very important to consider when you are doing any kind of collage. So to start off with, I'm using the pen tool. Press P on the keyboard for the pen tool for your shortcut. We learned how to use the pen tool in a previous assignment. Remember, Option and Command are your tools for changing those anchor points. So I will fast forward through this so we don't take up lots of time going through the minutia of doing the lines. Now we have our lines, so I'm going to go to my paths palette and I'm going down to the selection, the dotted line, and press that, and I get a selection of the portrait I just outlined. I'm going back to my layers and I will select my background, which is my portrait layer. And now I'm going to click on the layer mask icon and the background will be concealed because black conceals, white reveals. If I zoom in, I can see some of my edges need to be cleaned up. The background still shows through, so I'll use the brush tool to clean those edges up. I will soften that brush a bit and I can use black to conceal those edges. I won't do that on the video for the whole thing. Now I'm going to show you an alternative way to make your background or whatever you want to be concealed. So I'm using the same portrait. I clicked on the layer mask icon. I'm getting the brush tool again. And I'm going to make that brush larger. And I have black selected. So black conceals. And it's making the background disappear in the mask. So I would take the time to do all that. Of course, I would maybe make a mistake. So if I make a mistake, it's easy to fix. I can do Command Z, or I can press X and switch back to white, and white will reveal. I press X back to black and make my brush. First I want to hide that history box, and I'm going to make my brush smaller, and I can zoom right in on my edges. So I won't take the time to do all that on the video. I'll speed this up so it's already done. So I'm going to clean up some of the places I missed with the brush. And now we have a finished separation of the background from the foreground. So I can zoom in, I can see areas where I made a mistake. So if I make my brush smaller by using my brackets, remember pressing X, I can switch those back and forth quickly. So white reveals, and I can switch back pressing X to black. So black conceals, and I can clean up those edges very easily. And I will zoom through this part. You can see my dark edges are harder to see against the white, so I'm going to select my background and do Command I to invert it so I can see those dark edges more easily. Then I need to go back to my mask layer to clean up those edges. So you can see it's easier to see against the black. I'll go back to my background now and do Command I to invert it to white. Now I want to check my image size. I'm going to pull up my image size window by doing Option Command I. That brings up this window. Remember, it needs to be 150 pixels an inch for this assignment, 9 by 12 inches. So I'm going to fix the width on the next step. So if I do Option Command C, I get the canvas size window, and I want to make it be 9 by 12, 150 pixels an inch. I'm going to clean up that edge there that's still remaining by using black to conceal. So I can see that I need to expand the robe down there at the lower left. There's an empty spot, so I'm going to get my lasso tool and I'll use that to copy this edge of the robe here. So I will select that and I will go up to the window, make sure I'm on the window that is the actual image, not my mask. And I do Command C for copy, Command V for paste. And now I'm going to get my move tool and move it down. Get my erase tool and erase that blue background. Now I'm going to get my clone stamp tool. It's S on your keyboard. And you pick your target by pressing Option. So where you're borrowing from or stealing from, click that target and it will copy from that area or clone from that area. Now that I have my robe fixed, I'm going to put in a background. So I'm going to go to my public domain images here that I have gathered and open it in Photoshop, and I will do Command A to select all, Command C to copy. Go back to my image, select the background and do Command V to paste it. Press V for my move tool and move that, position it where I think it looks good. So I'm going to show you another way to create a background for your image. Going into my digital collage media files and selecting paper. So I'm going to find a piece of paper that I have either scanned in or found on the internet. So I'll open that in Photoshop. Command A to copy, Command A to select, Command C to copy, Command V to paste it. Now that I have it pasted, I want to adjust it, so I'm going to do Command J and copy it. So now I have a duplicate layer of the paper. I'm going to Blending Options, down to Multiply, and I get a nice antique look with those two layers of paper. So I could stick with this background or the other one I created, or I have other options. So line is part of the assignment. I'm going to use line in a way that will help move a person's eye around the image. I'm going to use this old circuit board image. So Command A to select all, Command C to copy, Command V to paste. I'll paste it in between the two paper layers for now. And Command T to transform and hold Shift to maintain proportions. So Once I get it the size I want, I try to position it to where I think it looks good. The paper over the top of the circuit board layer is on multiply, so therefore it is transparent to a degree. It's kind of making it look a little antique. So I can now I can use blending options on the circuit board. I can try multiply, see if I like it. I'm going to try divide, and I think I like that because I'm going to try something with the other background and move it down and move the circuit board up. Circuit board's obviously too strong, so I'm going to want to reduce its impact by playing with the opacity. So I'm going to the opacity and reducing that. I'm going to move this paper layer all the way to the top so it covers everything. Gives a nice yellowish tint to everything. I can reduce the opacity and make it stronger or weaker depending on what I want. Now I want to throw away my layer mask because I want to try something. Usually you don't want to do this, but I made the decision to do it, and I'm making the audio later on, and I thought I could have done this other ways later on, but I did it this way. So I've made a selection, and I did Command X to cut those pixels. Then I did Command V to paste them back in. I thought about doing something with this gap, but I changed my mind later on after I saw this hand. So I open up this hand and I'm going to select, first I'm going to throw away the lock to unlock the layer, and I'm going to use my wand to select all the white. So I can, right now it's on 11, which works fine for what I want. Now I can go to select and down to modify and expand, and I'll expand it 2 pixels. That will get rid of any white pixels around the edge of the hand. So I'm going to do Command X to get rid of the white. I'll do Command A to select it all, and Command C to copy, and Command V to paste. First I want to select where I want to paste it. Now I want to move it. So I like it there. I'm going to turn off the top of the head and adjust the hand. Now the hand looks very kind of ghosty and washed out, so I can adjust that by going to exposure, and I can increase the gamma correction and the offset and make it a little bit more dark. And I'll go back to image, down to hue and saturation, and I can increase the saturation, make it come more alive. So now the hand looks like it belongs in the image. Now I have an idea. I'm going to get this circular marquee tool and make a circle around the eye. So eyes are very much a focal point in images because we as humans are drawn to other people's eyes because the eyes say a lot. So I'm making a new layer. I'm going up to Edit, and I'm going to stroke that marquee 3 pixels on the outside, and I'll zoom in to see how that looks. With collage art, it becomes an evolution of the images you find and decide to put together. I did not have a specific story I wanted to tell or goal in mind with this image. It just kind of evolved. That's one of the fun things about collage. If you don't have a specific idea in mind, you just want to play around with imagery and put it together, and it evolves into its own story. So we want to create an interesting image with a good composition that would be engaging to the viewer. So now I'm going to introduce a compositional element that I've used in other collages in the past. So I'm using the marquee tool and I'm pressing shift to get an exact square. And I will make a new layer and get my paint bucket and press option to select a color and fill that with a color. So I'll do Command J to duplicate that layer and move it over. And now I will click on that layer window so I can select it. Use my paint bucket, select a color, pressing option and fill that up with that color. And I will do Command J again and move that over. And now I will do Command I to invert that color to that green. Command J again, duplicate that layer, so then I will do Command U to get my hue and saturation window and adjust the lightness and the hue and the saturation. Now I'll do Command J again to duplicate that layer and move it over, and Command I to invert it, and then Command U to get my hue and saturation window. Now I can adjust the hue, I can adjust the darkness and lightness to get it to where I want. I think I want it more blue, too far to the green, maybe a little bit darker. Click OK. Now I want to merge all these layers together. If I just do Command E and repeat Command E, I'll merge those layers together, which is what I did. Now I have that bar, which is a compositional element. So I have a line basically. So line is one of our element of art. So I have line and a repeated square shape. So I'm going to duplicate that layer, Command J, and I'm going to edit, transform, and rotate counterclockwise. So now I'm repeating that shape to help unify my piece with repetition. So I'm moving it up here in the corner, and I'm going to merge that copy into layer 11. So they are one layer now. So now I want to play around with the paper again. So I duplicated the paper. In the process, I lost my upper paper layer is what happened. So I'm replacing it and tinting everything to that nice kind of sienna color. Now I'm going to get my line tool, which is in the shape palette, and I'm going to press shift to get a perfectly horizontal line, straight horizontally. And I want to go up to my options and select a color for that line. And I also want to decide how wide that line will be. I'll make it 3 pixels and press return or enter. And that line is behind the head, so I can move it in front. So now I want to create more lines, so I'm going to speed this up, doing the same thing. I'm going to zoom in and see how they look, and I see that they don't quite match, so I'm going to use my directional arrows to nudge the line over. Pick the next layer and nudge, and the top layer nudge down, which is actually the bottom layer, but it was on top. So I'm going to merge all those layers together with those lines. So I select them all and do Command E. Now I want to make sure they line up on the other side, so I am going to rasterize them so I can cut them. So I'm going to get the rectangular marquee, select those edges, nudge it over a bit, and do Command X to cut them so they all line up on the edge. So now I'm going to add a sequential transition here of A, B, and C inside these three circles. So that will create a visual sequential movement downward in the composition. So it's just a compositional trick I'm using. Doesn't have to make sense. Just trying it out for now to see if I like it. It might stay, it might be gone. I haven't decided yet. We'll decide later on. So I will zoom down to see how it's looking, and I like how it looks. So I'm going to spend a lot more time on this and get it to a more finished point so I could spend a lot of time making this video. It's already 21 minutes. So here the image is finished, I think. I could change it. You can see it took on a occult theme. So I didn't plan that in the beginning, but when I put that hand there above the head, how to read the lines of the hand, I kind of took off with that, and that's what it evolved into. So here it is. And I'm going to show you how I did some of the other elements. If you look at the tarot card up here to the upper right, I'll show you how I put that in there. So I found that on Wikimedia. So it's a public domain image. So I'm going to do Command A to select all, Command C to copy, and then go back here and do Command V to paste, and Command T to transform, and I will press Shift to maintain my proportions. And I'll move it over to where that image already is, just to show you how I got there. So once I get it to the right size, I will press return. So now I have the new card over the previously placed card. I'm going to turn that off. What I want to do is duplicate that layer, so I'm going to do Command J. So I have a duplicate of that card over the top of the one I just put there, and I'm going to go up to my blending options and I'm going to click multiply. You see how it darkens it? So then I am going to reduce the opacity. So what I'm trying to do is get it to look a little bit more antique by doing that multiply option. Now I'm going to blend those two layers, or merge those two layers together, Command E. So now they are one layer. So now I'm going to double click on that layer, and I'm going to drop shadow and click on drop shadow and select drop shadow. I'll adjust the distance of the shadow. I can adjust the size. I can adjust the opacity. And remember, I want it on multiply, so it has transparency. So playing with those options, you can get what you want. It gives it a more of a dimensional look. Now you see this box here that I made that has the mosaic pattern. I'll show you how I did that. So I'm going to open up that image that I made it from. So this is the image. So if you go to Filter, then down to Pixelate, and down to Mosaic, click on that and it will change an image. So you can adjust the cell size of that mosaic inside that window. I kept it the way I had it. So I did Command A, select it, Command C to copy, and Command V to paste. So you can see it's the opposite of what I have it there. So I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to go up to Edit, and to transform and to flip horizontally. So now you see it's the exact image I had there. So I'm going to turn that off. So you see I have a drop shadow behind there, that mosaic image. So if I turn that drop shadow off, you can see the difference. Turning it on and off, you see that edge pops out more when I have the drop shadow there. See, I put a drop shadow around other images here, like the all-seeing eye, drop shadow around the tarot cards, drop shadow around the hand. I'm going to go to the hand layer and turn that drop shadow off so you see the difference. See the difference with the shadow or without the shadow. It's up to you. You can play with these options, creating more depth in your image, and sometimes you can overdo it. So I have a drop shadow with my color bars there as well. So I'll go to the color bars and I will turn that drop shadow off. You can see the difference without the shadow versus having the shadow. Gives it a little bit more dimension. So as you do your collage, think about the compositional principles we have learned in class and incorporate those into your collage. Yours does not have to look like mine. Good luck.